Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Intel session. I'm very pleased to have Graeme Hills join us today, very early in the morning, all the way from the UK. And he will talk all about reporting across multiple systems with Microsoft BI. Now, before I pass the controls over to Graeme, I'd just like to cover off a few housekeeping points. There will be a dedicated Q&A session at the end of Graeme's presentation. However, please do use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens to submit any questions you might have for him throughout the session, and I'll make sure that these get addressed at the end. The session is also being recorded, and the recording will be made available for on-demand viewing to all who registered. So keep an eye out on an email from Practice Above in the next couple of days for that link to the on-demand recording. Also, excitingly, Graeme has got a very special offer exclusively for Intel attendees. So please stay until the end for details on what that actually is. And finally, of course, as always, please enjoy the webinar, and we're glad that you're here. Now, Graeme, I'll mute myself. Before I do, please introduce yourself, a little bit of background about what it is that you do and how you got to be here today would be fantastic. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Irina. So, good afternoon. My name's Graeme Hills. I run a data consultancy from Banbury, Oxfordshire in the UK. And for those of you who know kind of like British geography, that's roughly halfway between Oxford and Birmingham. I hope you'll find the presentation today interesting. I just want to do a big thank you to the team at Practice Evolve for inviting me along today, and in particular to Irina for everything that she's done to arrange this. So thank you very much for that. So what do I do? We run a specialist Power BI and Power Automate services company. We operate across a number of different sectors, including hospitality, charities, rehabilitation, and insurance. But we also have our Aquarius reporting, which is our out-of-the-box legal reporting tool, which we'll tell you a little bit about later on. So we know law firms struggle with data and reporting. And if you've ever struggled with any of these, then this talk is for you. So are you struggling to get accurate, up-to-date reports? You find that you can't access multiple systems to get the reports out of them. You can't report on legacy data. You're facing a large delay and a cost to migrate data between systems. Your fee earners just aren't as efficient as you'd like them to be. Your in-house development team are too busy to get you the data and the reporting that you need. Your reports are static. They're not easy to use, not easy to understand. You can't create your own reports from a system, or you're spending far too much time manually moving data between spreadsheets. So if you struggle with any of those, then this talk is for you. It's not something that is uncommon in the legal industry. If you're one of those very lucky people who doesn't struggle with any of these kind of problems, then well done, you're doing an amazing job. I hope you'll still get something useful from this talk anyway. So in terms of the content today, this talk is all around architecting a solution across multiple systems using Microsoft Power BI. So we'll go into the kind of the depths of that. We'll show you exactly how to do it in the right way to make sure that it's scalable, secure, and future-proofed. But before I get into the details on that, if you'll indulge me, I'll just give you a few musings on some legacy technology, why law firms tend to have lots of legacy data. We'll then get into the meat of the how to architect the solution. I'll give you a quick case study from a UK-based law firm, TWM Solicitors, and then finally we'll introduce Aquarius to you. So, welcome to the future. Cool tech, holographic displays, and a nice hot pot of tea. And apparently in the future, you can actually type at that kind of angle without completely destroying your wrists. So, you know, the future's looking exciting. There's lots of stuff going on here, but let's face it, this isn't reality. And you're probably dealing with some form of legacy tech rather than this kind of very, very cool futuristic laptop. So what I want to do is take you back in time a little bit, 42 years to be precise. and show you my first computer. This is the first one I got back in 1983. And this thing was a beast. It was amazing. It had 5 whole function keys. It had a built-in printer that you can just see over here. And to load a program, you didn't just download it from the internet. You actually had to place a physical tape into a tape drive here and run it for about 5 to 7 minutes before the program actually launched. And this thing, like I say, it was an incredible piece of kit, and it came with a whole 64 kilobytes of RAM. Now, to put that into context, the computer that I'm currently running this presentation on has 64 gigabytes of RAM. That's over 1 million times, well, precisely 1 million times more than my computer had back in 1983. And I was kind of bored the other day and I went on to ChatGPT and I asked it the question, does my fridge have more computing power than a computer from 1983? And the answer came back, yes. Modern fridges often contain microcontrollers that are significantly more powerful than a computer from 1983. And so in the space of 42 years, I've gone from having a state-of-the-art PC to having a fridge which is more powerful than that computer. And let me just show you this to you in practice and how fast technology is actually evolving. So if you look at this photo here, this is from the Beijing Olympics in 2008. And the gentleman on the right-hand side, I'm sure a lot of you will recognize as Usain Bolt. And here he is. He's just won the gold medal in the men's 4x100 meter relay race in what would have been a world record time. Now, there's a bit of a sad part to this story in that he actually ended up losing this medal because one of his teammates was disqualified for doping offences. But anyway, I'm going off on a little bit of a rabbit hole there. The important bit here is not actually Usain Bolt, it's the crowd. I just want you to take a look at the background of this crowd and all the people who are taking photographs of Usain Bolt. And if you'll notice, there is this sea of digital cameras. They're just everywhere. Everyone is holding a digital camera. And you can see those ringed in red. However, there is one person at the back in this green square. And she's incredible. She is an early adopter, and she is using a new disruptive technology, which is the smartphone. So let's just roll on 5 years. And here we are at the Sainsbury's anniversary games in London in the year 2013. And once again, you have Usain Bolt. He's just won another gold medal. But look at what has changed. Everyone in the crowd now is holding a smartphone. So all the digital cameras, with the exception of one that's sitting here at the back, have disappeared. And that technology has been completely replaced within a 5-year period, with the exception of one digital laggard who is still using an old-fashioned digital camera after that 5-year period. And as I'm a data guy, I like a good graph. So let me show you this one about how the digital camera kind of rose and fell in that kind of period. So the first thing you'll notice, there's a little bit of a dip here in the middle. And I'm pretty sure this is down to the 2007-2008 worldwide financial crisis from the subprime mortgage selling. But what you can see very clearly is a steep rise in the use of of digital cameras as they replaced film-based cameras. The release of the first iPhone back in 2007, and then the very, very rapid decline of digital cameras thereafter. And there's quite an interesting kind of story in that digital cameras themselves killed off film-based cameras. And if you're a little bit older in the tooth like me, you might remember a firm called Kodak. Kodak were the world's biggest producers of film for cameras. And they have the dubious distinction of inventing the digital camera twice. Once in 1975 and once in 1986. And in both instances, the board of Kodak killed the project. They mothballed it because they wanted to sell film. That's where they got their revenue from. And they couldn't understand why they would want to sell a digital camera that didn't include film. They couldn't see the way technology was moving. They couldn't understand the future. Now, their patents on digital cameras expired in 2007, and the company filed for bankruptcy in 2012. So one of the largest film-based, camera-based companies in the world went out of business in that 5-year period because, again, they couldn't adapt to the future. They couldn't embrace that technology. And it's an interesting kind of question that if they were actually prepared to invest in that technology and to reorientate their company to take advantage of it, could we all be sitting here today with a Kodak K phone as opposed to an Apple iPhone? So that's all well and good, Graham, but we're here for tech stuff, so start telling me something useful. So let's talk about data within law firms. Now, law firms have lots and lots of data. A lot of you may already be on a cloud-based case management system such as Practice Evolve, or at least you're thinking about it. But it's also equally likely that you have data in other locations. You've probably got data being held on some on-premise legacy database systems. You've probably got some data sitting in other systems such as HR, CRM, time recording, telephony, etc. And I wouldn't be surprised if you have some kind of mission critical Excel spreadsheet that's floating around. I've never yet worked with a company that doesn't have a spreadsheet operated by Jane from accounts with which the company just simply wouldn't be able to operate without. But what do you do with all of this legacy tech? You know, I can go into a mobile phone shop and I can replace my mobile in probably under an hour. That's easy. It's almost trivial. And Apple certainly have deliberately made it very, very easy to upgrade your tech. But when you're talking about legal tech, it's not easy at all. Moving from a legacy system to a new modern cloud-based system can be a multi-year project. And so this legacy data that you're holding on to isn't going anywhere anytime soon. It's going to be around for a long, long time. And these old systems hold priceless information. You as a law firm are data rich. You have huge amounts of data. The problem is you probably just can't access that data. You can't do anything useful with it. So the talk today is all about how we can extract the maximum value from that data. And again, to put this in context of why it's important, bad data costs you money. It really is quite simple. And if you look at a few stats, Experian did some interesting research and they found that 88% of businesses lose money because of inaccurate data. And on average of those companies, they lose 12% of their revenue as a direct result. So this just shows you how bad data can directly impact your bottom line. 40% of enterprise data is inaccurate, incomplete, or unavailable. This one I find incredible. Less than 0.5% of all the data in a firm is ever analyzed and used. Most of the data that is captured is just left sitting there on a database and never touched. And the final one here is that your employees, your fee earners, are probably wasting about a day a week searching for information, searching for things that they need to do their job effectively. So again, this isn't a dry academic theory. If you're not in control of your data, it will genuinely cost you money. So in terms of a law firm, why is this important? So do you understand how much WIP, work in progress, your firm is sitting on? Are you sitting on a lot of unbilled work that could massively improve your cash flow if you were to get to grips with it? Do you have customers that are actually costing you money, but you don't know it? Are you writing off huge amounts of fees because you can't recover that work for that particular customer? Are your fee earners hitting their billing targets? Who are your good fee earners? and who are your less good ones? Who are the ones you need to invest more time and training into to bring up to the right kind of standard? Now, in the UK, we have our Solicitors Regulation Authority. I believe in Australia it's done slightly differently. It's state-based, and I believe you have the Law Society and the Legal Profession Board. I hope I've got that right. But if they were to come in and audit your law firm, what would they find? Are your compliance checks up to date? Are you holding on to client money that you should be returning? Are there things here that would worry you as someone who is running a law firm, that things aren't being done the right kind of way? Could they get you into trouble? Could they result in fines? And what we fundamentally want to do, what we need to achieve, is to take all of the data that you have in these various different pockets. So you've got, like I say, almost certainly some on-prem data. You've probably got cloud-based data. You've got data sitting with partner organizations. You've got data from your customers. And like I say, you've almost certainly got this mission-critical Excel spreadsheet floating around somewhere. And what we need to do is we need to bring all of that data together, combine it in a sensible way to produce one version of the truth. And once you've got that one version of the truth, that will give you the real oversight of how your firm is performing. Now, a lot of these systems will have some degree of reporting, but they'll only tell you part of the story. They'll only tell you what is happening with the data in that particular system. Quite often, they're static, relatively high level. But by bringing everything together into that one version of the truth, you can get the proper insights into how your firm is performing, and then the understanding of what you need to do about it. And there are 5 logical steps that you need to work through to actually get to the point of your data through to being able to visualize it. The first stage is all about data extraction and how you're going to get the data out of the host system. If it is locally hosted, you can probably just go straight into the database. That's the easiest one. But if you've got cloud-based systems, those are a little bit more complex. And in a cloud-based system, you're generally reliant on the functionality that is provided by that solution provider to get that data out. There may be some APIs you can use, or at least as a backup, there's quite often an option to save your data down to Excel or CSV. And then you can use a product such as Microsoft Power Automate to automate that extraction process. Quite often with a cloud-based system, rather than going directly into it, it's worth actually extracting that into some kind of staging database to start with before you do your reporting on it. The second stage is all around data cleansing and consolidation. And there are various problems with data, but poor quality data isn't a reflection of your organization or employees. It's simply a fact of life. And in particular, where data isn't being used, poor data entry habits can become established. Now, I'm not going to dwell too much on data cleansing. It's not what this talk is focused on, but it is essential for reporting. And there's 7 types of dirty data that you need to be considering when you're looking at cleansing your data. The first one is duplicate data. That's a relatively self-evident one. It's to do with where you have the same record in multiple times. So you need to combine those and get rid of those duplicates. Inaccurate data is simply where that data is wrong. Incomplete is where you are missing data. Inconsistent is where you have the same record on multiple systems, but there are inconsistencies between the 2 of them. And that could be something such as a spelling of a client's name. So you need to then start thinking about where your source of truth is, which systems you trust more than others, and how you can combine that to get one version of that data. You can have non-uniform data. So the non-uniform data is typically where things like dates. So you might have dates in different types of formats. And again, you need to convert those to make sure that they're all uniform for the reporting process. The final 2, excess data and non-APP compliant data. Again, I hope I've got that second one right. In the UK, we have GDPR. In Australia, I believe it's the Australian Privacy Principles, part of the Privacy Act 1988. But fundamentally, it's all about only storing the information that you need to protect the privacy of your client. So those are the 7 types of data that you need to be cleansing and looking at. But at this point, I just wanted to take a little bit of a detour, go down a bit of a rabbit hole. So when you're putting together a presentation like this, it's quite nice often to have some artwork to demonstrate the slide you're working on. And when I was putting this particular slide together, I was looking around online. I couldn't find anything that suited this particular topic very well. So I went to an AI generator website. It's called Crayon, and asked it to generate an image for the 7 deadly sins. And it actually produced this particular picture here. And I think this shows AI really, really nicely, that both the power and the danger of AI. So on the plus side, it's incredible. I can go to a website, I can type in a few words, and AI will generate this amazing picture, which fits the bill pretty nicely. But this is also the problem of AI. So I'm sure the eagle-eyed amongst you will have spotted that there aren't actually 7 figures there. There's only 6. And so I tried a few more times. I went back to Crayon, tried it a few more times, and this was another version that it came up with. And again, what you've got here is 6 figures. What you'll notice also down at the bottom, though, is we have 2 inconsistents. Now, you're probably looking at this and going, Graeme, the problem here isn't the AI, it's you. You're just rubbish at prompt engineering. And there's probably a reasonable argument for that. You know, I did this relatively quickly. I didn't spend a lot of time on prompt. And I dare say if I had spent more time on that prompt, I could have probably generated something more in line with what I was looking for. However, that kind of misses the point. AI is very much, it's a new and emerging technology. It's very, very immature. And one of the things that AI is famous for is hallucinations. You see articles in the legal press on a regular basis about people who are being struck off. There was a guy in America who used ChatGPT to write a law brief, and it completely hallucinated a load of legal precedents. I've seen another one recently in the British press where someone again got into a lot of trouble over this. And I think this is the danger of AI, because it is so new, because it is so emerging. It's so easy to type in something, get an answer which on the surface looks amazing, looks incredible, but it's only when you start to scrape away at the surface you realize that there's problems behind it. So I'm certainly not saying don't use AI. I think it's an amazing technology and it will change the world. I'm just saying use it cautiously. Be careful with it, because it's too easy to get something wrong. And particularly when you're looking at things like data, would you trust an AI to make a business critical decision when it can't tell the difference between the number 6 and the number 7? You know, so it's a really, really key point there. The other thing is, if you're watching this video on YouTube 5 years from now, you're probably laughing at me. By then, AI, I'm sure, will be completely ubiquitous. It will have taken over our lives. We won't be working anymore. We'll probably be sitting at home watching AI-generated cat videos all day while AIs have taken over our jobs. And in that case, it's fine. It doesn't really matter anymore. But at the moment, like I say, it's very much an emerging technology. Be careful, use it cautiously, but it is incredibly powerful. And if you can get it right, you can get a tremendous competitive advantage. So enough of me going down the rabbit hole. Moving back to data cleansing, one of the other things that you want to be thinking about is, you know, you've cleaned your data. How do you keep it staying that way? And a really good way of that is through what we would call exception reporting. So it's proactively looking at your data for data entry errors and anomalies, things that don't look right or are definitely wrong, that you can then feed back into the cycle and improve. And again, the more you use your data, the cleaner it will become as people understand the value of it and as you start weeding out these kind of problems with the data. So here we've just got an exception report, which is all to do with fee earner estimates, matter estimates, where those are either blank or they're in fact negative in some cases here. Moving back to our 5 stages, the next stage of your process is all around data transformation. So this is where you're doing things like merging fields, extracting text, truncating text, converting coded values to human readable categories and things along those kind of lines. After that, you want to be thinking about your data processing. So this is where you start to enrich that data. And this is where you start asking the questions, how many, what percentage, and actually starting to do calculations on that data to give you a richer data set. And finally, once you've done all of that, you can then start getting onto the exciting bit, which is actually visualizing that data and producing your pretty graphs and tables. Now, there's an interesting way of looking at this. This is an image that I got off the internet, and it shows the journey of data visualization. I think it shows this pretty nicely. There are lots of variations of this particular diagram, and there are some analysts who believe that this pushes the analogy a bit far. But I think from a high level perspective, it works quite nicely. So data in itself is meaningless unless you can get something actionable out the back end of it. And most firms can do stages 1 and 2. They've got their data, they can sort their data. That's sort of like the easy bit. A lot of firms can also get to stages 3 and 4, where they start to arrange that data and present it visually. But the complex bits are when you get to stages 5 and 6. So 3 and 4 give you an answer. Stage 5 explains why that is the answer. And stage 6 tells you what to do about that particular answer. So those are the bits you want to get to. And obviously getting to 6 is the key bit that you're trying to do. So that's all the kind of the background stuff. Let's talk about how we actually do this in practice. So this talk is all about Microsoft Power BI. The reason it's about Power BI is that Power BI was released in July 2015, and certainly in the last 5 years or so has become the de facto standard for any kind of management information, business intelligent work that you do. It's difficult to fully get a picture on the market share, but I've seen a couple of figures, but Power BI is roughly somewhere between about 33 and 60% of the MI market. And it's growing. It's becoming more and more the go-to choice. In second place, you have Tableau, and then behind that you have Click with around about 11%. Sorry, Tableau is around about 20%. One of the nice things with Power BI is a Microsoft product. It's secure, it's scalable, it's relatively cheap. There was a question that was asked earlier before the webinar started, which was how much does Power BI cost? I've looked it up and it's roughly 21 Australian dollars per license. So again, it's relatively inexpensive on a per user basis, although if you have a very large firm, that can start to become a bit expensive. And we'll talk about ways to get around that later on. It's also a nice open, scalable architecture. Power BI comes with lots of built-in connectors, so you can connect both to different applications and different technology types, and it's part of the Power Platform, so Power Automate, Power Pages, Copilot. So it plays nicely with other Microsoft products. And as with Microsoft, they do tend to dominate markets that they go into. So for example, if you're ever writing a document, I would say most of you are probably using Microsoft Word because it has just become ubiquitous nowadays. It is the go-to kind of app. So what is Power BI? There's 3 main components to Microsoft Power BI. On the left-hand side, you have the Power BI desktop. So that is an application that you install on your computer, and that is what you use for actually generating all of your visuals. It's where you put your graphs together, you lay out your screen design, and then once you've done that, you then publish it to the Power BI service. So the Power BI service is the middle part of this particular graphic, and this is where you do all of the back end work. So this is where you connect to your various different data sources, you ingest your data, you transform it, and you get it ready for that reporting. And then finally, you have the Power BI app. Now, the Power BI app is actually part of the Power BI service, but it's a distinct part of it. And this is the bit that you use to distribute your dashboards and your reports within an organization. This is where you actually consume your data from. And it provides that seamless experience across any devices, whether it's a mobile phone, a tablet, or a computer that you're using. Now, when people first start using Microsoft Power BI, they will probably start building something like this. And this is a point-to-point architecture. They have a number of different data sources, and they're pulling that data into a number of separate reports. Please don't do this. If there is one takeaway you have from today, is this is the worst thing you can possibly do. So for example, if we take data source 3 here, we have data being pulled into two different reports, these first two here. If data source 3 has some test data in it, you then need to remove that test data here in report 1, and also, sorry, I'm on the wrong screen, report 1 and report 2. And that means you have to duplicate that effort in two different locations. And that means you have a lot more work to do. This makes it very, very hard to maintain. And as you scale your reporting solution, it becomes an n squared problem, and it becomes harder and harder to do. You're not going to have data consistency between your reports. You're not going to have semantic consistency between your reports. And that means that when you're looking at different reports, you could get different answers. And that is a real problem in firms. And more importantly, the more you distribute things out, the more difficult it becomes to locate the right report across multiple workspaces. So like I say, please don't use this architecture. The way you want to do things is to build an architecture along these lines. So you back end the work. Most of the effort that you will put in is at the back end. And what you'll do is for each one of your data sources, you'll put it into something called a transformation data flow. So a data flow in Power BI is like an internal data warehouse. And so what you'll do is you'll ingest the raw data into that data flow. And this is where you transform it to make it consistent. So you can remove your test data, you can remove your bad data, you can do all your data cleansing in this stage and get it ready for the next stages in that 5-stage data process that I showed you earlier. So you can take all of your different data sources, you can put them all through the data flow. Once that data is all consistent and nice, you can then bring it together into an enrichment data flow. So this is where you combine it to make sure that your data is all together, and then you can start building your calculations in your semantic model. And the idea behind all of this is that eventually you end up with a semantic model that holds all of your data, holds all of your calculations. So you know that data is consistent, you know all your calculations are consistent, but more importantly, this model is easy to maintain. If there is a new test case or some new dirty data that you find in source number 1, you can just go to the transformation data flow and you can cleanse it there. You can sort it in one location. You don't have to do it in multiple places. So it's much, much easier to maintain. We'll come on to the increased portability in a couple of slides too, but it also makes it much easier to plug and play different data sources. Once you've done all of that, you can then build your reports against that semantic model. So what it means is that the hard work has been done at the back end, and at the front end, you have relatively thin reports. So rather than doing all of your transformations and your processing in each report, like I say, you're doing it at the back end. So your reports are very easy to construct. And it really, what this means is no matter which report you're looking at in your reporting suite, every report is telling the same story. So if you're looking at things like a conversion rate, for example, conversion from inquiry to instruction, different departments looking at the same reporting suite will have the same answer. So they'll know exactly what it is. So it's really, really critical to do this. Now, I mentioned earlier about portability, and the other advantage of this migration pathway is if you're sitting there with a legacy system and you're thinking about switching over to a new system, then this architect makes that migration much, much easier. Um, and it allows you to migrate systems with ease. So let me show you how you do this in practice. So on the left-hand side, we have a law firm that is using a legacy case management system. They've also got some HR data and some finance data that's all being pulled into one semantic model. And we have a set of reports that are working off of this semantic model. We can then introduce a new case management system. We can feed it into our semantic model using a transformation data flow and combine it in our enrichment data flow. The reporting doesn't change. It allows you then to report across both of those systems at the same time. So it makes that migration really, really easy. You can run both systems in parallel. You can run off the cases in your old legacy case management system until the point where you're ready to fully migrate over to something like Practice Evolve. And then eventually, when you're ready to get rid of that old legacy data, you can turn off the front end. You can either keep the original database to report off of, or you can extract the data from your old legacy system into a database to use, Microsoft SQL Server sitting in Azure somewhere. And then you can use your new case management system, like I say, like Practice Evolve. You can still report on your old legacy data, and all your reporting suites are exactly the same. So it just makes that migration process very, very straightforward and easy. In terms of data access and control, again, this is something that Microsoft Power BI does really nicely. There are 3 levels of access. So when you're first going into it, you access it just using your standard Microsoft credentials, so your username, your password, any 2-factor authentication you've got set up. Once you're into the system, we can then set up different audiences. So in this example here, we have a suite of reports for partners and a suite of reports for fee earners. And again, they're both hanging off of that same semantic model, but showing a different view of the data. And then finally, we can use something called row level security. So we can then use an attribute. In this case, it could be department, but it could be office location. And so we can say, for example, that fee earners who are doing conveyancing can only see conveyancing data, or fee earners doing personal injury can only see personal injury data. So it allows you to control down to quite granular level what data is seen by different people. Now, again, a nice feature of Microsoft Power BI, if you haven't used it before, is the ability to subscribe to reports. So for any report that you have built, you can use the subscribe button, and you can set up a process where you'll automatically get sent an email on a daily basis. So here I've got my billable hours report, and I want it in my inbox every day at 8 o'clock in the morning. So when I get into work, I can look at this and I can see how the firm is performing. So this is built-in functionality with Microsoft Power BI. And like I say, it emails you a snapshot, a physical image, a PNG file to you once a day. So that's great for graphical visuals like this. It's less good when you have things like tables. So we'll talk about an alternative on the next slide. Now, there are a couple of downsides. Like I say, it only sends you that snapshot, but the other thing is you'll need a Power BI license for everyone who wants to receive a report like this. So if you want to roll it out across your entire fee earner base, and if you've got a very large law firm, this could start to get quite expensive. So an alternative model to this is actually to use Microsoft Power Automate. Now, Power Automate is, you only need a single license here. I'm trying to do the conversion in my head. I believe that a Power Automate license would be roughly 40 Australian dollars per month. So again, it's relatively inexpensive. But what we can do here is we can set up a very simple flow. In practice, it'd be a little bit more complex than this, but you can get the idea that you set up a recurrence, and that could be daily, weekly, monthly, or whatever you like. You extract the data from Power BI, and then you send it in an email to your distribution list. So you can send each fee earner on a daily basis a bespoke report for them, showing them their performance and how they're doing against their billing targets, their hourly targets, complaints they've got, or any other kind of data that you want to share with them. And the nice thing about doing it like this is you don't need to have a Power BI license. So if you do have a large law firm, this can be a very, very cost-effective way of distributing data within your organization without having lots of Power BI licenses. So that's all the stuff about how to do it. Let me talk to you a little bit about a firm that has gone down this journey. So TWM Solicitors are a multidisciplinary law firm, top 200 UK law firm based in Guildford in England. The gentleman on the right is Alan Barrett, who is the head of IT at TWM Solicitors. And he underwent a major digital transformation project centered around the rollout of Practice Evolve to their law firm. Because this was mid-year, they needed to report accurately on both their legacy data and the new data that was coming out of Practice Evolve. And their goal fundamentally was to go from being um, a, a spreadsheet-based, gut feel-based law firm to a truly data-led law firm. So TWM, they had some experience with Power BI. They'd previously explored it, and they'd already developed some reports for a bespoke SharePoint application. So that had proved the value of what they were trying to do. And that initial success spurred them on to try and move on to the kind of the next step. So they were looking for a specialist partner. They had done some stuff in-house, but they rapidly realized that they couldn't do everything with the time and the understanding and the skills that they had in-house. And so they were looking for a specialist partner who matched their strategic vision of what they wanted to do to become data-driven. And that's where they came to us and they chose our Aquarius reporting solution. So the key bits that really made a difference for them were some of the reports around age debt and age WIP. And once they were produced, the managing partner was immediately able to initiate conversations with the relevant teams to improve their debt collection and invoicing. And it marked a significant shift away from the static monthly reports that they were using prior to being able to have that data at their fingertips every single day to push that billing profile through. They've also developed, in conjunction with us, comprehensive compliance reporting, allowing them to double check where they are against their regulatory requirements and to ensure that all the cases are up to date and adhere to the standards set, in this case, by the Solicitors Regulation Authority. Another big area of success for them was to generate accurate service level agreement reports for corporate clients. So this would show those clients exactly how they were performing against multiple matters on a monthly basis, giving clear visibility into things like turnaround times at each stage of the legal process. And these tools have really helped TWM to drive forward, to improve the efficiency of their fee earners, to improve their profitability, and take that next step as a law firm. We do have a case study that is available on this. And if you'd like a copy of that case study, please reach out to me. More than happy to send it over to you. And Alan, I know, is also very happy to share his experiences of that migration to Practice Evolve and all the things that they had to do around reporting. So I've got Alan's email address there on screen. I'll leave it up there as I talk, but we can go back to it later on if you want me to, if you can't write it down quickly enough. But while I leave it up on screen, I just want to very quickly plug the Practice Evolve user group that Alan has set up. So it's predominantly aimed for people in the UK and Ireland, but I know that Alan would be absolutely delighted if any of Practice Evolve's Australian customers would like to join that user group as well. And they do a whole host of things to do with promoting Practice Evolve and sharing their success stories about how they've used the technology and other complementary technologies to improve what they do as law firms. So hopefully you've written that down if you want it, and I'll just move on now. So let me just introduce Aquarius to you. I hope this presentation has been useful. We've covered a lot of technical stuff about how to build your own reporting suite. But if you're looking to accelerate your journey, then this is where we can hopefully help you. We started this presentation with a list of things that law firms struggle with, and we created Aquarius specifically to help deal with those problems. So Aquarius helps give you accurate, up-to-date reports. It allows you to report across multiple systems. It allows you to have ready access to legacy data from legacy systems you want to move away from. It helps reduce your migration costs. It helps to improve fee earner efficiency and hence profitability. It allows self-service reporting. The reports are interactive, easy to use and understand. We can automate the production and distribution of those reports. And Aquarius gives you a complete set of pre-configured reports for the legal industry. It's designed to be an out-of-the-box solution. So it complements the reports that you're getting from your other systems. It's not necessarily there to replace them. But what it does do is allow you to do that data aggregation across multiple systems into that one version of the truth. And it's architected in the way that we've been talking about today. So you know that it's future-proofed and it will help you ensure that your company stays at the cutting edge of technology. We've already done the hard work. We've configured Aquarius for various case management systems, including Practice Evolve. And you can use Aquarius to unlock the full visibility into your financial data, fee earner data, departmental data, and work sources. We have a full suite of reports, and we are continuing to develop and distribute new reports on a periodic basis. Like I mentioned earlier, Aquarius uses the latest Microsoft Power BI technology. So you know that this is a safe bet. You're not going to go down some kind of technological cul-de-sac. Now, there are a number of firms who have their own in-house capability. They have their own in-house Power BI resource. And a lot of those firms actually use Aquarius as an accelerator product. So they can put it in, they can immediately get the benefit of the out-of-the-box reporting that we have done. But because our semantic model is open, they can then create their own bespoke reports directly off of our semantic model. So it allows firms to cut a year or a couple of years off of their development life cycles. Finally, the other thing that we want to do with Aquarius is we want people to use it and to understand it. So we have our expert advisory service. This is headed up by Neil Beck, who has over 40 years experience in the legal sector. Neil, in his time, has been the CEO of a large solicitor's practice. He's been the group commercial director of a medical legal agency, and as I say, has a vast amount of experience. And he helps go into law firms to help them to understand their data, understand the problems they have that is identified from that data, and helps them to devise plans to then drive that firm forward, improving their profitability and efficiency. And I know Neil is desperate to come out to Melbourne to see his daughter, who's out there at the moment. So if we can pick up some Australian customers, I think he would be absolutely delighted. So if you're interested in Aquarius, there is our website. It's aquariusreporting.co.uk. And that's me done. So Are there any kind of questions? I hope this has been useful. I hope you found it interesting. Thank you very much for listening to me and indulging my little rabbit holes of Usain Bolt and AI. And I genuinely hope you got something useful from today. So, Irina, over to
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Graeme. Appreciate that. That was quite a comprehensive presentation. Um, I learned definitely a few things. We do have a couple of questions, but before I jump into those, at the start of the presentation, I mentioned that you have a special offer for the Intel attendees. So I'd love for you just to briefly explain what that is. And for those interested in taking Graeme up on his offer, I'm just going to launch a poll on the screen for you to be able to take advantage of that.
Perfect. Thank you, Irina. I had completely forgotten about that. So thank you very much for the prompt. Um, yes, so what we are offering today is for people who have attended this webinar, is we are going to put this into a draw, and one lucky winner will get 3 months of our Aquarius reporting software for free. So we will install it, we will link it up to your Practice Evolve system, because I'm assuming that most people here are using Practice Evolve, and we will give that to you for free. So that will allow you 3 months to go and explore your data, see how your law firm is doing, and to understand how and where you can improve as a law firm. So if you're interested in joining that particular sweepstake, then please click the Count Me In button or option now, and we'll draw a winner, I think, on the 1st of August. And then we'll be in touch with the lucky winner and give them our software for free for 3 months.
Thank you, Graeme. I can see quite a few people actually wanting to take you up on that offer, which is really exciting.
Perfect.
I might leave that on the screen for a couple more minutes, but also if you feel like you need to have a think about this, no problem at all. The email that will contain the link to this recording, I'll also just reiterate the offer again and include Graeme's details as well. So there'll be definitely another chance to kind of put yourself in the draw for this. Now, I do have two questions for you, Graeme. So
Mhm.
if we wanted to jump into that, let's do it. And anyone else that might have a question, please submit that now. We've got about 7 minutes, I think, 8 minutes until the end of the session. So one question came through for you from George, who is asking, how can we report on billing and resource performance using Power BI?
Okay, thank you, Irina. So, George, if I'm understanding the question correctly, and if I'm not, please correct me in the in by submitting a follow-up question. But I assume this is to do with how you can track fee earner performance in terms of their billing and their utilization. So we have worked with a number of firms on designing reporting around incentive schemes. So most law firms will offer their fee earners a bonus at the end of the year. And rather than that being a kind of finger in the air, yeah, I think you've done a good job, have this proportion of your bonus. What they want to do is to make this very, very specific. So we have built these incentive scheme reports that take into account a number of different factors. So it can be things like the number of hours that they've billed, the amount that they have billed, the number of complaints that they have received, the number of data entry errors that they have done. Um, and so you can take all of these different factors, put them through a calculation, and then say, and report on a regular basis to that fee earner, you're on track to receive 73% of your year in bonus on your current performance. And by giving the fee earners that visibility, it encourages the right kind of behaviors in your law firm. If they understand that, getting a complaints affects their bonus, if they understand that poor data entry errors are going to cost them on their bonus, then they will improve because they will be driven to increase that percentage as high as they possibly can. So that is how I would do it for combining that billing and resource. But like I say, George, if I've misunderstood that question, then please submit a follow-up one.
Thank you, Graeme. And one final question from Chris around Aquarius reporting, I believe. So
Mhm.
Chris would like to know, do you directly query the practice evolve tables in the practice evolve databases on the SQL server, or do you use the practice evolve API?
So we actually use the API to extract the practice evolved data into a staging database, and then we report off of that staging database. There's a few reasons for doing that, but the main one is it's just much easier to do it that way. So we can set up a refresh to extract the data. We typically extract data overnight. The reason we do that is we don't want to hit the Practice Evolve database with too many kind of data queries, which could impact performance. And I dare say the people at Practice Evolve wouldn't be very happy with me if I made their system run very, very slow. So we tend to extract the data overnight when no one's using the system, pull it into a staging database, and then report off of that staging database.
All right, thank you so much, Graham. I believe that's all the questions. Again, keep an eye out for that email with the on-demand recording and the offer. And Graham, thank you for waking up this early in the morning and joining us today. Really appreciate the information provided. I'm sure those who attended also do.
Mhm. You're more than welcome. Thank you very much for bearing with me and listening to me today.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the day whilst we wrap up for
Cheers.
our
Thank you.
Thursday.
Bye.
Bye.